to me. I wanna heal your sorrow. Just talk to me. We'll make a new tomorrow. Just talk to me.
So delighted to welcome to the show for a chat with us. It's the one, it's the only, it's ooh-ahh, Bob Booker. Bob, how you doing, mate?
I'm all right, Johnny. How yourself?
I'm not too bad. Obviously, not the season we all thought it were going to be, but we're Blades, so it's never easy, is it?
Well, we've been blessed for the last 2 or 3 seasons, haven't we? You know, with the rise to the promised land. So, as the saying goes, you have to take the rough with the smooth. So, you know, as a player, I'd been there before in that position, and especially what some of the players are going through now, and what the manager's going through, and he was part of that.
Yeah.
When we had our season where we didn't win a game till Christmas. So, so it's a tough time, but it's a time, as you say, the sayings, you know, we've got to stick together, the fans have got to stick together, and the players and the football club, and come out the other side of it, hopefully.
Definitely. One thing I want to touch on in there is one thing that quite a few people have asked me to ask yourself is there any similarities? Because I know that when you joined us from Brentford, you spent nearly a decade at Brentford before joining us. You ended up as a cult hero with the Blades, but you didn't start out that way, did you? And you had to take a bit of rough criticism from the crowd, and you won them over. Was there anything to that, or did you just do what you do best and hope that won them over?
It's all about being strong with your own mental side of it. You know, I had the managers backing, so you know, at times I would sit down with Harry, and Harry, you know, he knew I was struggling. I knew I was struggling. I wasn't really up to match speed with Sheffield United, having come from not really playing in the Brentford team that much, really. I'd had a bad knee injury, so I was looking to wind everything up, and my contract was coming to an end, so I was on the downward slope, really. So to do that change, it was a massive change for me, and yes, I did struggle, and rightly so. You know, the criticism came, and you know, they was probably expecting a 32-year-old experienced player who played nearly 400 games, which I had in the lower leagues. You'd think it would fit well, but the fans were very demanding on that cop, I have to say. But for the right ways, you know, they want someone that's going to produce and give 100%. And I was given 100%, but I wasn't given the quality that I should have been giving the fans. So it took a time for me to come through that, and it changed at Mansfield one night. But I think having the family around you and having Harry around you to tell you, you know, I'm going to keep putting you in the team. That's what you want to hear from the managers, and the players were behind you. And it's one of those, you know, as a player, you all go through them situations. If you're a goal scorer and you're not scoring, you're having a dry run, what do? Do you put him out the team, or do you carry on? So my head was in the right place to carry on, and I believed in the ability that I had, albeit limited, to get around the pitch and get in contact with the game and do what I was good at, you know, breaking play up, you know, giving it the ball to the wingers, winning my headers, winning my tackles. And it took a while for that to happen, so I was well off the pace to start with, which affected me, and the crowd realised that, and you know, that's where the stick comes in. But as I say, you've just got to take it on the chin and either fall by the wayside and don't keep getting picked, or you go through it. And for me, I went through it.
As we said, that turned around and you became a cult hero with the Blades. None more so as when you actually left us, and you were, I think you were introduced on the pitch, weren't you, just before one of the Steel City Derby games, and ended up jumping on the cop to a bit of a frenzy, from what I've been told.
You just sort of touched on that, and straight away that my arms, the hairs on the back of my neck. I remember that day vividly, and I was due to play against Sheffield Wednesday that day. You know, I think that was a full house of about 32,000, and we were playing the Pigs, weren't we? So. You know, that was a big game, and I got called into Harry's office, you know, a few hours before that game, and said that Brentford had come back in for me, and I had no interest in leaving Sheffield United, albeit my age was cracking on a little bit, and I still had a year of my contract left, but Brentford were offering me sort of nearly a 2.5-year contract to come back down south, and I didn't want to go, but Harry, being Harry, sort of said, listen, you know, not so much financially, although it was a good deal, but you know, we can't probably promise you another contract at the end of this season with the way your knee is and the way your age is. So, you know, it's probably best that you do go back home. My home was still down south. I was still in digs at Sheffield. So it was a tough decision to say that I was I was going to leave that day, and you know, Harry sort of made the decision for me. But then he said, "You're going to go out on the pitch and say cheerio to the fans," which I didn't think was a very good idea at the time with playing Sheffield Wednesday. But I'm glad I did, because the reception was great. Even though you was leaving a football club, that doesn't normally happen. It's normally, oh, you know, he's left, he's gone, and you're forgotten. But it seemed to go the other way, and that was a very special day for me. A hard day to leave in front of the Kop, and I can say there was a few tears and lumps in me back in my throat on that day for sure.
Yeah, and my old man has been pestering me, and I mean absolutely pestering me, to ask you what it felt like when you jumped on that Kop. As he said, the hairs were sticking up on the back of your arms and your neck, just thinking about it then.
Yeah.
He always tells me that worked that crowd into a frenzy, and it really gave them a platform for that game. And he holds you responsible for how hot that crowd were that day.
Yeah, well, I like to think so. So when I went to the Kop to start with, I did a sort of all around in our half the pitch with John Street and the South Stand and that. And obviously the Sheffield Wednesday fans had got wind of things, and they was trying to come back with a bit of banter, but it weren't happening. So I think hopefully if it did stir it up, and I was a little bit responsible for that result, then that makes me very, very happy. But yeah, getting close to that Kop. I mean, I remember one time with the manager now against Southampton when I scored 2, and me and Chris ended up in the front of the first five rows of the Kop then after scoring them goals. Yeah, that's a special time, especially when the ratings are down and you can get contact with the fans. Obviously, you can't do it these days, but that's what it's all about. You know, that's what the fans is, to get them going, get them off their seats, and bring some joy to them. So that's hopefully what we did.
Lovely stuff. You touched on your digs down in Sheffield. When you were living with Garner and Tufty at the time?
I started with Chrissy Wilder. When I first sort of had my first week's training, I was in a hotel for the first 2 or 3 weeks, which sort of got a bit bored, and then I went to live with Derek French and Jeff Taylor for a while, but Jeff Taylor kept farting and burping all day, so the sooner I got out of Upperthorpe, the better. So I got out of there and I went with Chrissy Wilder at Gleedless and Tony Garner. So, I shared Chrissy's house with Tony and Chris, and that was a great time. They was a little bit younger than me, so I was trying to educate them on how to keep the house clean and tidy up, and they loved it when I went home for the weekend, because I always come back with homemade cakes from my mum. So, it was a precious time. And then I moved in with Martin Pike for a while after Chrissy. Then I moved with Chrissy Wilde again when his mum and dad had a place up at Morgahay, up there at Woodseat. So I lived with Chrissy Wilder for most of my time in Sheffield. So that's where we really got our bond from. So yeah, it was very happy days, and I felt at home. You know, at the place at Morgahay, I had my own self-contained flat that his mum and dad said I could have. You know, it was nice and private. I could come and go when I wanted. You know, me and Chris used to go out running and socialise together. So it was, you know, if you feel happy in your environment, then you're going to be a happy person on the pitch, I believe. You know, especially when you're away from home for weeks on end, and some weeks, I didn't go home for sometimes a month, 6 or 8 weeks. So you need to be happy, and I was very happy in Sheffield, and you know, I could walk the dogs, and you know, it was a great city. I mean, I love living up there. Just the people, I don't know what it is, and they won't mind me saying this, but the Northerners are so much friendlier than the Southerners. I don't know what it is, but you know, people say good morning to each other in the morning when you're walking around the street. So it just felt great. I just love the area.
Well, I imagine modern day sports scientists would have had absolute kittens with 2 young lads like a Garner and Chris Wilder living together at that stage of their careers. You said that you were kind of the responsible one, but I bet there were a few times where it was a bit like men behaving badly with.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't like to say what you used to see around the house like, but I just, if I left on a Friday or went home on Saturday after game and come back on a Monday morning, it was chaos. You know, and I'm not like that. I'm a bit OCD. I like things nice and tidy, so I'll get amongst it. And you know, it was just wasn't too bad for two young lads, but responsible. But yeah, a little bit messy to say the least.
You were at Brentford for a decade, obviously before you came up here. Obviously, you had 231 appearances, then 42 goals, 109 appearances for us, and 13 goals. I ask everybody who comes on, out of them 13 goals, which were your favourite?
What, for Sheffield United?
Yeah, for Sheffield United.
QPR away, without a shadow of a doubt.
Is that the one that kept us up, weren't it?
Yes, yeah. I think Andy Dakin still owes me 10 grand goal bonus for that. So I'm still waiting for that. So no, that was the goal for me, really. I mean, it was a special day, as a lot of fans will probably remember, down at QPR. my family was sitting above the scoreboard of that end. So I think when you watch the goal on Twitter or whatever it's on now these days, and I managed to go behind the goal, looking up towards my dad, who was looking over at the scoreboard and leaning down and look at me. And I'd arrived like it was a sea of yellow shirts. We had the famous away shirt. It was probably the best day of my football career. QPR away, one for keeping the blades up and obviously scoring the goal that did it. So that will stick me for, it'll take me to the grave. It was a fantastic day, and I think a lot of Sheffield United fans put that amongst even the Leicester days, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Leicester was a fantastic achievement, but after the season we had with not winning the game up until Christmas, and then going on that run, everybody had written us off. But you don't write Harry Bassett's teams off, and you don't write a group of players off that we had. We was a bunch of thugs, really. We was a team of nobodies. I was 32, 33, nearly retired. Brian Dean for, I don't know, 60, 70 grand, whatever he's often done. With Tony Garner, 40 grand. Local boys, Chrissy Wilder, Dane Whitehouse, Jock Bryson, 40 grand, done wherever he come from. Absolutely fantastic acquisitions to a football club for hardly any money at all. So it was just a team of nobodies, but we had that togetherness and people couldn't handle us.
Speaking of Bryson, another thing that I've had so many questions come in on private messages, far more than I usually get. Is it true that Bryson, on Vinnie Jones's first day, walked straight up to him and made sure he knew who the daddy were at the club?
Who the what was?
Who were the daddy? Who were in charge?
Jock Bryson?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard that one.
Oh no, not Jock Bryson. No, that's me completely off topic. It's Brian Gale.
Brian Gale. Yeah, Brian. Yeah. Biffo. He was a big character. But I think he knew Vinny from his Wimbledon days, so he was a strong character. As I said before, we had a team, through the seasons I was there, we had some real strong characters, Carl Bradshaw and Mitch Ward and people like that, and Stan. Stan was a leader, wasn't he? He's a great servant to the football club. I think you'd go through that whole team, and everybody had a real important role to play. Some of them were quiet, but some of them were quite eccentric. Brian Dean's a very quiet lad, but what a great lad to play with. So really good characters, and Harry just put us into a shape where we all knew what we was doing, and we didn't complicate it. We all had jobs to do, and that's what we did, and we didn't change the plan. You didn't get Paul Stancliffe trying to dribble out the back. It was out of his feet and get it forward. You didn't have Ian Bryson or John Gannon or anybody that was wide, doing anything apart from trying to get a crossing. And they was ordered to do that from Harry. If our wide men didn't get 10 crosses in each per game, you ain't going to get a goal. So it wasn't rocket science, but it was a cultured system that we all knew what we had to do. And if I was going to try and come short and get off a centre half and try and be something to Paul Gascoigne that I'm not, then Harry would let me know. So get it out your feet, get it in the corners, get it in, and it worked. And that's what we did.
I think that's one of the problems we've got maybe in this season is with Sheffield United. Last season we were so ruthless in knowing what we needed to do with the ball. I mean, it was a different system, and people kind of got it caught unawares. But we were getting balls in the box and we were doing what we were good at. Do you think we're too dithery this season, maybe?
I don't think. And Chris wouldn't have changed his plan. Obviously, the rest of the Premier League now have probably done a little bit of homework and didn't expect what was coming the first season when Chris got in. When we got to the Premier League, they didn't know what was, but they didn't know when we was first there, and we stayed up. So now teams have chance and they've worked it out a little bit and they changed their tactics. And to be fair, the football club or Sheffield United has had a big turnaround with players since last season. There's no excuse because Chris will still be sticking to his guns, but that takes a while as well for players to settle in and get used to the system that Chris wants to be playing. So it's a bit of a mixture of things, really. But last season it's going for you. Like Chris said the other day, there's big moments, and last year they fall for you, you take them, and you need a bit of luck in football. I was at the Brighton game last night, and one little instance on VAR, and you lose 2-1 at home to your local rival Southampton. And it's all about big moments, like Chris says. And I think if you're in them positions, against Leicester, Jamie Vardy, 90th minute, he scores. No disrespect to Sheffield United forward, he might get in that position and he doesn't score. Sometimes it's just that little bit of quality that you're playing up against. And you might have to hold your hands up and say, look, we've been beaten by a bit of quality. It hurts, but you've still got to try and compete with it. So it's difficult. It's tough. It's tough.
In your view, if that were Harry Bassett in that situation, would he have been screaming at his centre half for not taking one for the team and taking Vardy out in that situation?
Probably, yeah. Probably, yeah. That's the way it is these days, isn't it? But the game's changed since then as well. Anybody, if you're pressurising anybody around the penalty area now, you can't make contact.
No.
And if they get by you and beat you and stick one in the top corner, you hold your hands up and say, well played. But as soon as you make a bit of contact, you've just seen players, whether they're faking it or it's a bit of professionalism, they're going over with an easy bit of contact with a little nudge, they clip their own heels, it all goes on, and you can face the consequences from VAR. The one last night was outside the box. The referee sprayed the line outside the box, VAR, and now it's given inside the box. So it can be ruthless.
It can. For yourself, you said the game's changed a lot there. You came through at Brentford. How was your path into football? I know you window cleaning business, didn't you? And then Brentford took you on an extended contract. I came into football at 18. I didn't do an apprenticeship. I worked in a furniture factory for 4 years when I left school because I wanted to earn some money. And then I was just lucky enough to get the groundsman at Brentford at the time. He was my manager on a Saturday morning where I used to play for Edmund, the same as Vinny. And there was just a little bit of a rope around the pitch with 2 men and a dog watching. No nets behind the goal light, so it went into the street when you missed the target. And I was doing fairly well as an 18-year-old. I was playing up front then, big and strong, scoring a few goals, and I was lucky enough to get a trial for Brentford against Brighton, and I scored 2 goals in that trial, and it snowballed from there. A month later, I was signing professional forms. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, to be fair. Yeah.
Didn't really see it coming. I love the game, but I never thought I'd have the chance to do it as a professional. So, after sort of playing a trial and 6 to 8 weeks later, I was in the first team squad at Brentford at an early stage. Was a massive turnaround for me. So, again, I was very inexperienced and I struggled at Brentford as I did at Sheffield United in my early days, where the crowd, I was young, but I was so inexperienced. So I got loaned out to Barnet under Barry Fry, which was an experience, I have to say. And that sort of grounded me playing at that level in non-league. You met some centre halves that you wouldn't want to meet out on a Friday night, and it was a good learning curve for me. So then I came back to Brentford, and then it sort of snowballed from there really, and I got in the team and become a regular. So
that led on to, I don't think players really get trials at 18 years old anymore, do they? You either signed up to an academy and then filtered down the league system from a young age, 14, 15 now, or that's it, you don't really get a career in the game. But to go from being 18-year-old, getting a trial at Brentford, and then fast forward to being at Sheffield United and Harry Bassett telling you you're going to be captain for the Leicester game, how did that feel for yourself? Did he let you know a week beforehand on the day, or?
Well, it was probably the week before because Paul Oldstan had got a hamstring injury leading up to the Leicester game. So it wasn't really on the radar to be captain. I was one of the Southerners. I was probably one of the later players to be in the squad from when Harry brought me up. So there was, it could have been any one of anyone really. It could have been Mark Morris, it could have been Chrissy Wilder being a local lad. Could have made him captain. Could have made Brian Dean captain. Colin Hill, he was an experienced pro. So for Harry just to pull me a couple of days before and said you're gonna take the team down the tunnel at Leicester, that was a very proud moment, and I remember that vividly, and being in that tunnel, and I could see down the tunnel and see the sea of yellow shirts and all the fancy dress on the far side because we took over most of the ground that day. And then I just remember looking round behind me and seeing that group of players and thinking, oh, come on, this is it now. This is the big time. Let's go and produce. So I had every confidence in the group that I had behind me. It was like going down into war, really. We were ready for it, and we couldn't have been in a better place. Didn't start the best, but we was in the best place to go and deal with it.
How does that feel as a player, just seeing? Because again, you wouldn't see that nowadays. Just 4 sides of a ground, I think, weren't it, or 3 sides, just completely took over.
To the right, bottom and top tier, wasn't it? And then from the low side, it was all the way along. So you're probably looking at 50,000 blades there. And most of them were predominantly in fancy dress, which was quite bizarre, really, because, again, every time we scored or equalised or when we went in front, there was a pitch invasion. And I just remember trying to tell people to get off the pitch, and I was telling like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, get off the pitch. We've got a game going on. Everyone in front of me was on their knees, and they was in fancy dress. It was quite bizarre, really. And there was a cardboard cutout of myself. Someone went on with a cardboard cutout, life-size cardboard cutout of myself as well. So I was telling myself to get off the pitch. It was a bizarre day. It was absolutely. It was a fantastic day. Great, happy days that was. Leicester away.
First thing I want to say is, whoever brought that cardboard cutout of yourself into the ground, own up now, mention it on Twitter and tell us, one, where you got that cardboard cutout from, and two, send it in so we can get it to you.
Well, I wanted it, but I'll tell you what happened with it, Johnny. I think we went out that night. We ended up going into Josephine's when it was open. And Billy, I think it ended up in by the door, just inside the door as we was coming in. And as we was going in, and we got allowed in, Billy Whitehurst punched it, I think. So it got quite damaged, but it was in Josephine. So where it went from then, I'd love to see it and get it at some stage. So if it's out there, I doubt if it is, but it was a strange one, seeing yourself standing in reception at Josephine's in your Sheffield United kit.
Somebody out there has got to have the Billy Whitehurst assaulted Bob Booker, Josephine's cardboard cutout. Somebody's got to have it, please. Obviously, you said celebrations carried on with there. You move into the new season. Famous green out cutting, blades up, owls down. We were the representatives of the city up there. Didn't start out that well. We all know that. But between that losing streak and then obviously the QPR game, you've got that big chunker where we went on that good run. Was it just a Christmas party that saved the season, or was it more than that?
I think it played a part. It was a great move by Harry to have Christmas at that time of year, after not winning them games and going on to that. I think it was 13 or 14 unbeaten games, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it played a part, but I think just the way that Harry dealt with it, we was really, as a group of players, happy to be at that level. He wanted us to keep enjoying it. He didn't really put any pressure on us about going down or anything like that. And we just stuck together. I think the fans stood behind us, even though when you're losing week in and week out, still to have that away support like we did.
Yeah,
it was just priceless, and that's what keeps you going. There wasn't any animosity amongst us. I don't think there wasn't any booing, and even though because I think they could see that we was generally having a go.
Yeah. Even
though we were getting beat 2-1 or 1-0 and just missing out like the team is now, you still need the backing of the fans, which hopefully the team's got at the moment, and that can be priceless to the players. Obviously, they're not in the stadiums at the moment, but I think if Sheffield United, if Bramall Lane was open now, that would be a massive boost for the players. Absolutely massive, because of, well, I know what they're like, you know what they're like. It's, they're there for us. So, but it was, we did have a very strong togetherness as a group of players. We were very mentally strong. We played hard, we partied hard, we trained hard, and we just kept going. We socialised together after games. It wasn't all this jumping in cars and shooting off like they do these days, and going off in the Lamborghinis and all that. We would all go back in the social club after training, to have some lovely toad in the hole and a couple of Guinnesses, and it's like a massive family. It really was a massive family, and I think all the players from that era would tell you the same. We just were very, very strong together, and we, everybody could point the finger at anybody, and you'd listen and take it on board and get on with it. You might have the row, you might have a scrap in the dressing room, and you get it sorted out. Fisticuffs, let it happen, get it done, clear the air, and then you have a beer after the game.
What was your favourite memory with that group of lads? Not so much on the pitch, but off the pitch. I know you said that you're bond, you're like a family, and you had those social club moments. Is there one defining memory you've got that kind of just summed up how? Go on.
Well, I've just got a few memories. I've got some crazy memories. We like I say, we did everything together. I remember one time when it was snowing and we was up at the training ground, and we decided to split into two groups, the Northerners and the Southerners, because that's what it was all about, really.
Yeah.
I mean, most Friday mornings, we'd do a bit of pattern of play and do the set plays and everything, and then Jeff would set up a a small seven, a small seven-a-side for 6 minutes each way, and it was always the North against the South. And we used to kick 3 bags of shit out of each other on a Friday morning before a game. But that's how we did it. You wouldn't be seeing that today on a training ground.
Character building.
Character building, and if you took the tackle and you got injured on a Friday, then tough shit, someone else was coming in. That's how we did it. But we had North against South once up in the snow, and I got stripped naked, all bar just a little bit of a slip on in the snow by the Northerners, and the rest of the Southerners disowned me, and I was stuck up at the training ground with no training kit, no boots, and I had to make my way back to Bramall Lane from the training ground with just a slip on in the freezing snow. So yeah, all sorts of antics used to go on, room wrecking at hotel, well, not wrecking, but just, I remember once the lads, when Harry wasn't in his room, they managed to get his key and they moved all of his furniture. They moved all of his furniture. So that's my Alexa. Alexa off. Alexa off. Alexa off. Alexa off. Sorry about that.
That's staying in. That is staying in.
It was Mr. Boom Bandastic, whoever he is. So they removed all the furniture from his room and put it out in the corridor. So when he went up after his meal, the bed and the bedside tables and all the lights were out in the corridor next to the lift. That's what they done to the manager. So we used to have some laughs. I mean, the night after the promotion, I forget what pub we was in, but it was down low underground. I can't remember where it was. And we just lost track of time. And I remember we was all still in our suits. It was from the first promotion when I was up there. And we finally come out of that pub and it was morning and people were queuing up for their buses while we come out the back steps and out the double doors, out the exit. And there was people queuing up to go to work. And we was all coming out there in our suits and ties after promotion. So yeah, great times, happy days.
Did you have any run-ins with the other squad from South Barnsley while you were out and about in town? Did you ever bump into any of them?
South Barnsley, as you meaning the Sheffield Wednesday fans?
Pig lot. Any of their players or fans? Are they?
Yeah, we had a little bit of trouble one night when Vinny was on board with us, and I think Sheffield Wednesday were playing away, so you'd think it was a pretty safe time to go out in town a little bit. And it was over our side. I think we was at Henry's. Was it Henry's uptown? I think it was called Henry's. Yeah. And Vinny parked his car outside, and obviously it had his name on it, Vinny's Vauxhall. And a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans came back from the game early because it got cancelled, it got postponed, and they started to gather around Vinny's car and started shaking it around and rocking it around, and they realised we was inside, and that I think the local police were called. That got a bit frightening because I thought they might have been coming in, but we had a bit of backup. We had Billy Whitehurst, we had Carl Bradshaw. I think we'd have been all right. So it didn't materialise into too much, but yeah, they was on our case.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it, with Sheffield, a two-team city, you're always going to have that kind of risk, aren't you, when you go out and about with players having nights out.
Yeah.
You always said that you felt like Sheffield were home, so those kind of instances I imagine were quite rare. Were there any times you went out in Sheffield and you just thought, I imagine it was usually after promotions, that you thought, wow, this is it, this is what being a footballer is all about, like with fans, partying with fans, anything like that?
Well, I was always one of those players, when we had signing days, fans pay their money to come and see you. So, I think you can return that gesture by spending some time with them.
Yeah.
Whether it's signing autographs or having a picture done, we used to have signing days. We'd be outside the ground for 2, 3, 4 hours, stuck in a corner signing autographs. And there's one story that I still keep in contact with a young lad, well, the lad now, and he asked me for my autograph with his mum, and he was only about 6 or 7 years old. And he said to me, or he said to his mum, "Do you think Bob would come to have dinner with us?" And I said, "What do you have for your tea?" And he said, "We have meat and potato pie." And I said, "I'll have a bit of that." He said, "Would you come to my house?" And that's what I did. So I turned up at his house. I think he told about 25 of his mates, so they was all outside waiting for me. But I went inside with his family, and I had meat and potato pie and sat with his mum and dad. And he's now a grown-up lad. He's still a fan. I still see him on the cop, and he's got a couple of kids himself. So Yeah, little things like that. It's not difficult, is it? And
No.
I think today now the modern day footballer is detached from the fans. You know, he's shipped into the game on a coach. You don't have much time to sign autographs. They're straight off afterwards. You know, you know, when you go out, you're in the public eye all the time. So it has changed considerably. But my first thing, Mick Rooker, Mick Rooker, I think he used to take me around to the pubs and the clubs, and I'd go and sit with the fans and have a drink. And I found that quite normal, and I enjoyed it. It got to, you get the odd time, and I was at the pictures once over at Crystal Peaks, I think it was, and in the middle of a film, a couple of supporters had spotted me in the middle of the film, and they jostled their way along the middle of the row, asking for my autograph while the film was going on, which was a bit embarrassing, but I couldn't turn them down. So just to get recognised in the street is quite bizarre, really, because, when I was at Brentford for 10, 11, 12 years, you might get the odd person to recognise you, but when you're in Sheffield and you're walking around and you play for the Blades, everybody recognises you.
Yeah.
And that just comes with the territory. But there's nothing wrong with stopping and talking to someone and shaking their hand and signing an autograph rather than just walking past them. Why not? That's just me being Bob, really. That's just the way I was.
That's brilliant. What you said about going for tea at some lad's house. Can you imagine a modern player doing that nowadays? I can't, but to do that, I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's not always the players' fault these days. It's social media. It's all changed.
Yeah.
Players, the money's more, so everybody thinks, they're nearly all millionaires. So that comes with, so the modern day player now, he probably can't go out and do what I used to do because he'd just get overruled and people will be taking too many pictures of him. It's going to be on social media. As soon as he says anything out of order, it's all going to get blown up. So it's moved on. So, people say, don't you wish you was in the modern game now and, being in the team and earning the money there? And no, I don't. I love the era that I was in.
Yeah.
As a footballer, and I wouldn't want that to change. Football's changed for me, and to be fair with you now, apart from Sheffield United and Brighton or Brentford, I don't really watch a lot of football because it's changed so much with the VAR, and I just don't enjoy it. There's not enough activity, there's not enough goals, there's no action. I'd rather watch a good Championship game because I find it very tedious, the Premier League, unfortunately. But that's the way it's gone.
I think I agree with you there on that one. I've got this sudden burst of nostalgia for 80s and 90s football that I keep watching, and my little lad seems to look at me like I've gone out and like I've lost my mind.
Yeah.
He can't understand why I keep watching it. But to me, that was proper football, and that is something that I do miss intently. Speaking of that era of football, you can use players from either Brentford or Sheffield United for these questions. Best player you ever played with?
Best player I played with? Oh, blimey. Well, a couple come to mind. I was lucky enough, and a lot of fans probably won't remember this player. And he's unfortunately he's quite ill at the moment with dementia. Great Stan Bowles. Yeah. I was lucky enough to play with Stan Bowles at Brentford, and he was an absolute legend. And also at Brentford, I would say Terry Hurlock. Fans might have heard of Terry Hurlock. And I played with Chris Kamara. They were good players. They were good pros. On the Sheffield United front, it's got to be Brian Deane for me. Playing with Brian Deane, there's some great lads in there because they was all brilliant at what they did. But Brian Deane, I just think, for what we paid for him and what he became, and he's still as Brian Deane as he is today. He was a great lad. He was great to work with, the gentle giant. But for someone for his size now, in the modern game now, God knows what he'd be worth because he had 2 good feet. He was good in the air. He was quick. You wouldn't say he was the bravest, but he put himself about. But he wasn't a Billy Whitehurst, was he? Let's put it that way. But so he was a really class player, I thought, in Brian Deane. He was great to play with. And Glenn Hodges for me was, left foot like a wand. So when he came in, he made a massive difference to us in what he did for our football team that short amount of time. He could be a match winner for you. We used to call him the luxury player because he couldn't run around and tackle.
Right.
But the other 10 of us used to cover for him, and that's sometimes when you have a luxury player, that's what we had to do for Glenn. And he won't mind me saying that, but you give him the ball in the right areas, and he's going to punish people. So he was quality, absolute quality.
Who was the most? I don't want to. Obviously, we can cut this one out if you don't feel comfortable answering it. But who was the most, let's say, overrated player you ever played with?
What are you laughing at? That's a difficult one. That.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of overrated. That's an hard one.
Yeah.
That's an hard one. I can't really pick one out, really, because I would say at Sheffield United, probably... No, it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not trying to put any player down. I'm just trying to think someone that I thought, blimey, you know, he's in the team, but he's not that good, really. Because as I said before, all the players I played with, they all did a job for what we was expected to do.
Yeah. I'll switch it around for this one then. Who do you think was the most underrated player you ever played with?
Well, at Sheffield United, I'd probably say Ian Bryson.
Ian Bryson.
Yeah, and John Gannon. You know, John Gannon took a lot of stick next to me when we was a two in the midfield. But what John did, you know, my job was to sort of destroy people in midfield and hopefully give him the ball because he had the ability to do something with it. Yeah. Great on set plays, and I think he was underrated because he's one of those. He wasn't a player that got around the pitch a lot. He wasn't quick. He wasn't really a tackler. But again, he just kept things ticking over for you. You know, one of them Brian Robson types where you just like, you know, he's gonna make a good pass, whether it's a 5-yard pass or a 6-yard pass. He's going to keep the thing ticking over. He's going to give the ball to the wingers. So, and Ian Bryson, I mean, I think he'd be a manager's dream on the modern day. You know, could get up and down. You know, he was pacey. He was aggressive. He could score goals from wide positions. He was good in the air. So I think he had a bit of everything for me, Jock, and he was very underrated for what he did for the football club.
Lovely stuff. Now we're going to wrap it up here. So you've got a book out, and I want to give you a chance now to tell everybody where they can go and buy it from. Yeah,
well, the book's still out there. OOH-AAH, the Bob Booker story. It's been out for probably about 18 months, 2 years now. It's still going in the club shop. You can still get it on Amazon. I think it's something like $10.99. Nice little Christmas present for everybody. It's the life story of me from coming from factory floor to the professional floor. So it's, you know, it's not how much money you got and how many cars and how many houses you got. It's what it's like not to have money to pay your mortgage, or, you know, what's it like to go through depression. Yeah. What's it like to have a marriage split up? It's all in there. Plus a lot of stories, you know, with the players. You know, you need to buy the book to read the stories of behind the scenes. So, you know, it's got good reviews, and Henry Winter from the Times has given a good antidote in it, and Bradley Walsh does the foreword. So it's in the club shop. It's on Amazon. So just in time for Christmas again. So it's still ticking over nicely. And thank you everybody, because the royalties are still coming in. So that keeps I can still pay the bills. So, but hopefully, you know, if it's out there, just go and have a read, especially if you're a Sheffield United fan, or if you're just a football fan, you know, from the 80s and 90s, what it was like to be a player in that era.
Lovely stuff. Bob, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for everything you did for the club.
And me Sheffield United mug.
Bob, again, thank you so much, and up the Blades.
Up the Blades. Keep it up for the rest of the season, chaps, and keep up the support, you lot, all right? Once a Blade, always a Blade.